Good afternoon. It is 4 o'clock and it is August 20th, 2024. And this is a Jefferson Public Utility District Board of Commissioners regular board meeting. My name is Jeff Randall. I'm president of the board and calling the meeting to order. Jefferson PUD will be offering both virtual online meetings as well as in-person meetings unless advance notice is provided. Online participant audio will be muted upon entry. Please unmute at the appropriate time to speak. And if you are calling in, use *6 to mute and unmute and *9 to raise a hand to request to speak. Let's do a quick roll call. I'm Jeff Randall, president of the board and commissioner for District 1.
Kenneth Collins, Commissioner, District 2.
Dan Tupper, Commissioner for District 3.
All right, all commissioners are present, and on the agenda this afternoon, we have all sorts of things. Do we have any changes to the agenda, Kevin?
No.
Okay.
I'll make the motion to accept the agenda as presented.
Second.
Okay, we have a motion, a second on the agenda. All in favor of approving the agenda, please indicate by saying aye.
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 Aye. Approved agenda. Okay. The next item is public comment for things on consent agenda or not on the agenda at all. The public comment period allows members of the public to comment, limited to 3 minutes each, on any items not specifically listed on the agenda or for items listed on the consent agenda. Prior to any public comment, members of the public must first be recognized by the president and are not permitted to disrupt, disturb, or otherwise impede the orderly conduct and fair progress of the commission's meeting. After an initial warning by the president, individuals who intentionally violate these guidelines through actual disruption of the commission meeting will be dropped from the meeting. Do we have any folks who want to make public comments on items not on the agenda? Sir.
Bill Stover, District 1. I have a couple comments and a question. So first, on the 4-year power work plan that was presented on July 30th, which totaled a little over $66 million. I have a suggestion I think could make it more meaningful to me and maybe to you, especially to the commissioners. You did a cost analysis not long ago for the capacity charge, showed that the basis for our existing infrastructure is 18 million plus a few dollars. And we have 7 substations, 131,000 kVA, and that netted out to $140 per kVA. I think it would be really insightful if you do that same analysis for the end of 4 years, where you project what the total cost basis would be for the infrastructure, and with one more substation and some more transformers, what the kVA would be, and just take a look at how that compares. That's a suggestion. It would make the plan. There's just a lot in that plan. It would help boil it down to something I could compare to the existing infrastructure. The second comment I've got is around the substation transformer shuffle plan presented last week. And I think it's a project underway, which sounds very exciting, especially because it includes a second transformer at the Dan and Roberts substation, which could immediately start offloading some of the peak power draw off of the Hastings substation. It would pick up the hospital addition next year and also the houses coming on line at Madrona Ridge. So that's all, I think, very exciting, and I look forward to that taking shape. I do have one question though, related to all the activity that's sort of planned over the next 6 months or so. We had a 49th Street 3-phase extension project that needs to come. I think there's still work to be done to separate the phases out into the neighborhoods. So I'm wanting to ask you, if when that's going to get done, because I think this shuffle thing is going to start taking precedence in October. And then also along those same lines, there was a plan to put some replacement regulators into the Hastings substation later this year. I see in the 4-year plan, there's a $500 million $500,000 projected for new regulators for the Hastings substation in 2026. So how do those two play against, are we abandoning the plan now and waiting to 2026, or are we going to do both?
Okay. Thanks, Phil. And you just shy here over 3 minutes, but thanks for wrapping up. So Kevin, you want to take a shot at answering those when you get to the manager's report, and I'll try and help cue you, and we can ask Phil to restate if we forget something. Rod, did you have anything, or are you just here to listen? Okay. Anybody online with any public comments for things on the consent or not on otherwise on the agenda? I'm not seeing any hands.
I don't see Roger's number up there. As
Okay.
he usually has.
Well, then let's move on to manager's report. And so I listed 4 questions, and the one about the cost basis on the capacity charge, if that could include the planned work, that's a really interesting question. And I imagine there's probably a legal answer of what we can actually base it on. I don't know if it's stuff that has to be in the ground or not, but that's an interesting question. Transformer substation shuffle extension of 3-phase on Hastings update, and then this replacement of regulators. Any of those are
Okay, I'll go kind of
interesting.
reverse order.
Okay.
The regulators we're gonna replace this year is in Dana Roberts, not in Hastings. So if, I may have misstated that in the past report, but, and that is scheduled, I believe, in 2 weeks. That'll give us a little bit more capacity out of Dana Roberts. We're looking at a project to extend 3-phase from Hastings up Cook Avenue. And that's a work in progress. We're trying to decide the best way to go about that, but that is a future project. As far as what we're doing on 49th Street and splitting those loads, we're comfortable where we are today. We don't plan on doing any more work through the next year on 49th Street than that. The load is split to where we think it should be. We may do some fine tuning as we pick up some load and see it grow differently, but for work, we think we're okay there.
And sorry, that was my misstatement of Hastings. I was like in my head, got the streets wrong. So the 49th Street is done for now, but it sounds like it's one of those things where if we decide we need to extend it,
Yeah.
you can add on to it. But for now, we're
We
done.
feel we're good for now.
Okay.
There is, in the 4-year work plan, there are regulators scheduled for Hastings substation, but we're letting that go through this year anyway. Just in today's board packet, there's a quote for 6 regulators for $500,000. That's a year out.
Wow.
So there'll be more discussion on that later in the report.
But the Dana Roberts, we have the equipment.
Dana Roberts, we have the regulators to change the smaller ones out to the larger capacity. And then hopefully if we do the transformer shuffle, we can scrounge up enough material and items we need to make that happen. Either late December or into January sometime.
Okay. I think that was all the questions. Oh, and then this, I don't know if you have an opinion on the cost basis issue, if we could include future, that might be a question for the FCS.
Like apples and oranges to me.
So a 4-year work plan is built specifically to 740C codes that RUS requires for us. We have to submit it to them. We could do analysis. It would take a lot of work, and it's not something that would benefit us. So we don't want to do it, just
Right.
straight up. I could understand it may help some people put things together in perspective, but as far as a work construction plan and that kind of stuff, we can give you more information. I can work with Mike, with Will on specific transformer changeout project to get more information, but I honestly don't think that helps staff.
Yeah, and in reality, we already have a number that's, speaking for myself, fairly high. I don't know that we need to have a number justifying the even higher number, but we'll see where the commissioners are after we talk about that item on the agenda. And we can talk about, and we'll have an opportunity to talk about that more on the agenda. Do you want to continue with your regular staff report, Kevin?
I do, and I'm gonna call on Joel Haisner, legal counsel, to give us an update on some property.
So thank you. I wanted to brief the commission on the status of the real estate purchase proposal we have with Jefferson County for the substation parcel. And I've been working with the prosecutor at Jefferson County, Phil Hunsaker. He's been really great to work with, very easy. We have a proposed letter of intent that's going to be non-binding on both the PUD and the county. So it doesn't require commission approval at this point. But you know, we've sort of settled on the terms, and and these two parcels, I think, were owned by the port and the county bought them. Is that right, Kevin?
Yes.
So, and that was just like maybe 2 years ago. And so they're two different parcels. One's approximately 36,000, the other's 53,000. So, you know, 89, 90,000 total
That's square
Yeah.
feet you're talking about.
dollars.
Dollars. Okay.
Dollars. I don't have, I don't know how big the parcels are. Kevin, do you?
They're little 2 acres.
That's why I thought the numbers per foot.
These are dollars, for basically what the county paid.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
And yeah, this is what they paid, and we will need to go through a conditional use permit process. And the county has been considerate enough to allow us to do that during the initial part of the deal, so that we don't have to close on the property until we actually get that conditional use permit. But we are under, you know, we've got to apply for it and pursue it in a timely way over the next year. And you know, basically we're going to have to do a little bit of due diligence on it because the county's owned it for such a short period of time. They're not willing to make any representations and warranties about, you know, whether, excuse me, whether or not there's any environmental problems or things like that on the site. And he didn't anticipate that there would be, but we need to do our own checking. And that's really you know, it's a pretty simple deal. And if you have any questions about it, let me know. I think our intention at this point is that Kevin would sign the letter of intent on behalf of the PUD. That would give us the opportunity to go in and start doing the zoning on it. And then once we feel secure on the zoning and what we hear from the county on that, then we can go ahead and bring the purchase and sale agreement back to the commission for approval at the same time that the county will also do the same thing, because both bodies will need to approve it.
Okay, and did we pass a motion authorizing staff to investigate it, or was that even, we did? Okay, great. So that's where
So
we're at.
this is the status up to date on this.
Very good. Commission questions on this one, or are we okay to move on? It's like, you can continue.
So do we know if, do we know, Joel, if those parcels have been scoped out in terms of whether there's any cultural sensitivity that might impede our ultimately building on the parcels?
I don't believe so if we've done that, but we will get the county's file on that to see if they have, but we may want to include that type of survey when we do any sort of environmental investigation on it. We won't be required to close on it if we can't get our approval. So the intention, Commissioner Collins, was that we would go in for a pre-application meeting with the county, and they would lay out what's required for the CUP hearing.
Okay, thank you.
Yep.
Right. Please continue, Kevin.
So, and this is along the same lines. As you know, we've been picking different directors to do different things in champion projects. On this project, we're going to have Gene champion the project. We're hoping that as soon as we can, we would put the permit into the county. To me, that's the crutch. If we can get the conditional use permit, that enables us to do so much more. So Gene will be running up that part of the project where we're trying to get these things covered with the county. We will go out and do a survey. There's certain things we're going to have to spend some money, but once we have it done, we're very comfortable that it's going to come back positive for the purchase of the property. We've spent time on site. A little difficult because you get in the trees to know you're trying to figure out the property line. So that'll be one of the first things we do is have the surveyors come in and put up some lath. But we're hoping to move this along quickly because we do believe this station is needed quicker than later. The work at Dana Roberts picks us up a couple years, but this is a long-term project. It's 4 years, 5 years at best starting today. So we're going to push pretty hard on this one. It will take, like I say, time, energy of staff, and a lot of people working together to make this one happen.
And to date, there's no surveys on record. Neither the port nor the county had it surveyed.
I've looked for markers. I can't find any. So we can see the surveys on the county maps and stuff, but I can't find like corner pins and stuff like that.
Okay.
It is right on the right of way. So we know where the right of way is. We know where the one side stops and ends.
Okay.
There is another piece we're having to work on. Gene will be working on this. We're looking at a specific easement to come in. We have 3 or 4 different options. We're going to visit with the port and the county about access into the property. We need to take big trucks through there. You know, there's a lot of stuff that has to happen. So a road does have to be built to the property also.
Okay. And is this something that, like the conditional use permit, is that something that you think staff is able to prepare, or have we had to go out for outside help for that kind of thing? Or does it kind of depend on what they ask for?
It depends what they ask for.
Yeah.
We've started a lot of projects in-house and they keep asking for a little more, a little more, a little more. And then, for example, over here, we ended up having to have a PE stamp. And that means we go outside. So we're not sure yet.
Okay.
But that's part of our learning curve and why Gene will bulldog this great project.
Excellent. Thanks, Gene. You get to learn something. Look, county land use permitting process.
So much more than that, Jeff.
You
So
get
much more.
you get to know what it feels like to be on the other side of the customer service table.
There's 2 other things on my item. One is a quick apology to Tom Tersch. He sent me an email talking about the ferries. In my schedule, I've done a little research. Tom, apologize, I haven't returned your email, but I will. Great comments, and we are looking forward to that whole project. As you gather information, please send it on. It's much appreciated.
Since you referred to Tom's that email, I was on the phone with Joel earlier today and I asked him about the question that Tom had on our policy about the 700 if you don't get a free fiber connection, and we decided the 750 for this period of time, and it could be paid over 3 years if that was a gift of public funds. And I don't know, Joel, did you have a chance to look that up, or are you not ready to offer it?
I have looked at it. I'm actually working on a little more detailed opinion, just because I think it's an important question, and it covers an aspect of things that we haven't really addressed, at least to my recollection. But the long and the short of it is that I believe that we were fine offering this sort of installment approach. And there's actually some case law involving extension of electric facilities by a PUD, and that they were allowed to offer payment on that over time. And the key part of it is this a government purpose? And it may not be, there's a question about whether it's an essential government purpose or not, but clearly providing broadband is a governmental purpose. And we are providing extension and allowing people to pay this down payment over time, and then they become monthly customers. So there's clearly consideration offered for the service, and typically the court doesn't look behind the amount of consideration or the type of consideration. They just want to know, was there an economic, offer, acceptance, benefit, payment of consideration for a deal? And I'm comfortable that it is, but I'm going to provide you with a more detailed, fully researched, with a few footnotes and everything. So,
Okay.
and I'll be happy to make sure to share that with Mr. Tiersch, and I appreciate. I don't think it's. I mean, if he wants to comment on it, that's absolutely fine today. But otherwise, certainly happy to discuss the research with him.
Okay, so on our phone conversations, you said that this was important enough because it involved our new broadband business that it was worthy of a written memo. So you're going to provide us a written memo on that.
Yep.
Okay, and Tom, just to let you know that we did get your question and we're working on it, and that's the preliminary response, that because there's value of getting a new customer, that it's not a gift of public funds, but there'll be more information on that. So thanks for your question, though. You want to keep going, Kevin? I'm sorry to interrupt you there.
A couple little things left. My schedule from the end of August on the 29th, I have a PUD Association in Mason 3, and then almost all of September I'm gone either on personal or work trips for most of the weeks. We are trying to schedule a meeting on September 20th. I don't know. Annette sent some stuff out, but I thought I would take the opportunity here to see if we could schedule our board meeting. If we can't, that's fine, but we will have Finley Engineering here from our broadband team for the grand opening of it's not the grand opening, ribbon cutting ceremony for broadband in Quilcy.
Okay.
We thought we could take opportunity at that time to bring them to the board. But if it doesn't work out, we'll bring them a month later or something like that. So there's no pressure. We were just trying to, catch
Okay.
two birds, one stone.
Well, I'm free that day. I know Dan said that he's gonna be in Wenatchee at Waputa and that they wrap up around 11:12 or something. So it sounded like if it could be kind of in the middle of the day before, the middle of the afternoon, that Dan could make it, I can make it. I don't know, Ken, what's your availability that day? 20th?
Middle of the day is best for me, after 11 and before 2.
Okay, yeah.
Yeah,
perfect.
I like that window myself.
Yeah, that works good. So,
So could we plan something, say from 12:30 to approximately 2?
sure.
We'd
Works for
definitely
me.
be done. We need about an hour really is all.
Okay.
Does that give?
That's
travel-
fine.
Yeah, I'll just be in Wenatchee, so I'll just zoom in from there. But that's the best window. I should be done with the board of directors meeting by 11, I would assume, and then, so that time window should work fine. Just
Okay.
puts me out of Wenatchee a little later to be home for the fair, so no worries.
Tell them to come in their sumo, not sumo, their samurai armor because we're probably gonna throw things at them.
I hope not.
Not money. As in, we're not-
Relationship with Finley, we've worked through a lot of issues and we're pleased with the response we have now.
Yeah, we're not gonna throw cash at them.
Not cash, no, it was more like blunt objects that would not cause permanent physical damage, but express displeasure. Okay,
And with that, I am done.
okay. Any questions, commissioners? On any of that?
Quick update on the kind of the little storm we had. Was there any damage, appreciable damage or outage stuff or anything like that we should be made aware of, or?
A lot of little outages, nothing major. There was a concern of maybe a small fire in the Discovery Bay, Gardner area county line that, it could have been an equipment fire. Nobody knows. It wasn't underneath like the transformer, the fuse, which typically a pole fire would be there. But with the winds, there was a question there. We don't believe it started underneath our pole. It didn't start underneath our pole, but so no damage. The crews did work a lot, but there was they did really well getting people back on in a timely fashion.
Okay, thank you. If there's nothing else on manager and staff reports, I guess we move to commissioner reports. And Commissioner Collins, are you willing to go first?
Sure. Brief report. I attended the special board meeting on the budget on the 16th. Earlier today, I attended the special meeting that we had on the Shine Plat LUD. Interesting process. Glad that we're moving towards closure on that. I'll be meeting with the general manager on the 22nd. I plan on attending the ICG meeting on the 29th. And look forward to talking with the general manager again on the 30th. And that really is my report.
Okay, thank you, Ken. Dan?
Yes, thank you. So I attended the Public Infrastructure Fund Board meeting on August 7th. Cindy Brooks from the EDC gave a report on EDC expenditures and revenues requirements. The PIF funding contract for EDC is set to expire, so the PIF board voted to extend the EDC funding of $100,000 per year for another 2-year cycle. That'll go before the county commissioners to approve, and I don't see any reason why they probably won't do that. EDC also expects to receive about 1.2 million in recompete funds, and they're going to utilize that for a 1.5 FTE employee for a 5-year period. And that's where the majority of that money would go to help them, deal with businesses in the community, training and whatever help they might need. The PIF board also voted to make $600,000 available later this year, probably in about 2 months. Those funds would become available, and asking for RFPs from all of the eligible entities, us, the port, city, et cetera. So the EDC funding and project funding are both subject, like I said, to the county commissioner approval, but it doesn't look like there will be any issues there. So there's $600,000 going to become available for infrastructure funding through that funding from the county. And I believe that we're going to try and come up with some projects or work with somebody on another project possibly to get a little bit of that funding, hopefully. Later on the 7th, I traveled to Portland for the PPC member forum. BPA representatives gave a presentation on their resource program. I attended the PPC executive committee meeting on August 8th. The draft 2005 PPC budget was presented for discussion. 2.5% overall budget increase over 2024 was proposed. Just as another note, just part of that with the dues, our dues will actually go down a little bit in that budget. So just as an FYI, the board approved the draft and it will come before the membership for a vote in November on that budget. There was discussion from staff around the BP 26 rate case. Very interesting to hear some of the projections that were coming out of that. It's estimated that BPA rates for that cycle will increase by 13 to 14%. So it's just the beginning. And that's just that 3-year period. I think it's going to be a 3-year rate case.
Is it?
That's not even the contracts. The contracts could be, above and beyond that. We'll see how that all plays out. Because those have to be signed at the end of 2025. So we'll see how that works out. The executive board also voted to inform BPA that PPC fully supports the Southwest Power Pool Markets Plus development process and encourages BPA to invest the required amount of dollars to stay engaged in that market evolution. They're getting a lot of pressure, BPA, from other entities, other electeds around the region to slow down or maybe even not help fund that market. So
Sorry, what market was it?
that's the Southwest Power Pool Markets Plus. That would compete with the CAISO market, California Independent
So there's
Operators.
folks who are asking them to slow down their evaluation and participation.
Yeah.
Interesting.
Yeah. I don't see why you would not want to do that because the Markets Plus actually has a lot more things that look conducive to our region than the CAISO market does. So governance is one of the big things. It's at the end of the day, who gets to make the call and decisions on where things go and how it happens and who's going to get the most benefit out of it.
Seems like the calls for engaging with CAISO instead are primarily political. It sounds like
That's
been
exactly correct. I
people
would.
calling in favors and getting state
Yeah.
officials involved when they don't.
So anyhow, that was the direction given to the executive board. There was that, they voted and they said, yes, we're gonna that to PPC or to BPA to keep pushing forward with that process, whatever, the dollar amounts that go with that. I don't have a number. It might've been 25 million. I don't quote me on the number, but it in the big scheme of things, it wasn't a huge amount of money to keep invested in getting that competitive market set up so that you have a competitive market. It won't just be one market that everybody has to go to.
Especially when they look at when they're short of power, what it costs them to get it if they don't have a market to work with.
Yep. And let's see what else. PPC's executive board election cycle is in effect and it's 2-year terms. There's a couple months here for all the members to put forward names of people they either want to keep on the board or maybe new people that when they want to get onto the board. So that process is in effect right now. And I won't even begin to go through how that process works. It's a very convoluted and difficult system to figure out. We basically have 2 votes. It depends on what your dues are and the size of your utility and a whole lot of different criteria that go into it. But we have 2 votes. There's about 100 members and it could be 500 votes total. And it works in a litany of you fill out a slate of 21 positions and the order that you put people in matters. So that's kind of the quick overview of how that process works. BPA Administrator John Harrison gave updates on many of the issues that BPA are engaged with at present and thanked PPC and the membership for their help and support, particularly with the Markets Plus issue and other things as well, other legislation that BPA is having to deal with or lawsuits and litigation and those sort of things. Let's see, I worked the PUD booth at the Jefferson County Fair on August 9th, 10th, and 11th. Thank you to all of our great staff who manned the booth and a job well done. We got a lot of great feedback. It was all positive. I don't think I heard one negative comment. A little bit of disappointment here and there about people who aren't going to get their broadband for free or that certain, certain services we have are not getting to them as quick as they would like. But other than that, it was all positive. Let's see. So what else came out of that? And I think congratulations were in order. I think we won a award for the booth for, and thanks to Jameson Hahn, our digital communications person in particular, one of his hobbies or pastimes is doing things with fiberglass and wood. And he had a couple of dinosaurs, which was the theme of the fair up there. And so I think that kind of put us over the top for being noticed as, I guess, the best booth. I don't know what the award was. So again, thanks to Jameson for all his hard work on organizing that and decorating the booth.
Yeah, he's got serious artist skills. It was impressive.
Yep.
Seeing
Yep.
that he made those.
So, and I attended the Growth Management Steering Committee meeting via Zoom on August 13th. The Jamestown Slalom Tribes asked for and were granted some language changes in Section 10 of the county draft-wide planning policies that relate to tribal entities. That Section 10 has to do with tribal entities in the growth management comp plan updates. And let's see, what else did they? The committee heard a report from planning staff about the Department of Commerce population housing distribution projection tool that came out. And the county staff, county and city staff recommended a change to a 40-40-20 split on the 40% was for county, 40% for city and UGA, and 20% for rural distribution. It was 70-30 was how the group started out, what the county wanted to do to split it. But with this tool that came from Commerce, they felt that this was a better way to try and plan the population distribution and where to put the housing, so to speak. But again, I think they're still going to work on it. They've got time through next year to work on that. They be in the two planning departments. The committee voted to proceed with that plan. So it's, again, that'll go to the county commissioners and the city council. The meeting on the 13th was the last meeting for that steering committee, unless something else comes up. I think they got everything out of the committee that it was tasked to do for getting this preliminary draft comp plan in place for the county and the city to move forward. I attended the NOAANET meeting on August 14th. NOAANET financials are stable and trending better than budgeted targets. NOAANET had 87 days of liquidity at the end of June. The NOAANET pension liability and pension conversion are completed, absolutely 100% done. So all those funds have been moved around, and all of the people that had to have things done with their accounts have been squared away. So NOAANET's completely done with that process now. The NOAANET retail broadband project in Chelan County is progressing, and NOAANET staff are confident that they're getting close to launching a marketing campaign to offer multiple services in Chelan County. Let's see, I attended.
Listened to that meeting also, and they were, which county were they talking about working with on retail? Was it?
That's
Cowlitz?
Chelan. No, it's Chelan.
Chelan is the
I
pilot,
think
then they
Lewis,
talked
maybe Lewis.
You're
It
right.
might be Lewis.
It was one of those, and
Yeah.
I thought that was I don't know, Will, were you on that call too?
Well, Will Painter from Lewis, I mean, he doesn't attend the NOAANET meetings, but I know that about the same time we started out, that they were pursuing some grants and they'd gotten a large amount of money. And Lewis has been kind of at the forefront too of pushing things out. I don't know about whether it was all retail or not, but I don't know Lewis's.
The observation I had is it really seems like there wasn't much interest in retail not that long ago. And all of a sudden, now they're talking retail, and that was interesting. It was interesting to hear them talk about what they think their call volumes would be. So I'm glad, we're not the only ones looking at retail, and it was interesting to hear that.
They're being methodical, being very methodical about how they move forward with it. So I attended our special budget meeting on August 16th. Again, thank you to staff for all their hard work on the budget. I received a call from a customer in my district on August 17th who was displeased that the PUD had a contractor who had accessed their property and took down a gate, hadn't contacted him. I relayed that conversation to our GM. I received another call from my district on August 19th with a complaint that a PUD contractor had accessed his property without permission and damaged some fencing. Relayed that conversation to the general manager. Again, I think communication wise, we've got to do a better job. I don't I'm not laying blame or indicting anything. I think we have to really be paying attention to how we're going about, because I've got other calls in the past as well. It's not just about broadband. This is about vegetation management. It's about all sorts of different things that I'm hearing about. And the common denominator is communication. I think we have to make the effort to do a little bit better communicating with the public. And I don't know what that looks like at this point. Regardless of whether we have access rights or not, it's still, we need to basically, foster and take the time to cultivate goodwill with our customers, because that's who we're working for, and that's what this work is there to do, is to help them, and we need to get everybody on the same page. I met with the general manager on August 19th. And I'm going to accompany Waputa staff to Skagit PUD on August 27th as part of my duties as Waputa Executive Board Secretary. I will attend the ICG meeting on August 29th, and I will meet with General Manager Street on August 30th. And that completes my report.
Okay. Mine's gonna be pretty fast. Was at the fair also. We had a Music Boosters booth for the school, Port Townsend School District, so I only swung by the PUD booth for a short time, but it was, again, Jameson's work and everybody else's work was notable. It was a great booth. Had a phone meeting with Don McDaniel on the 12th. On the 13th, I had concerns about how were we communicating enough with county staff regarding their development approvals in terms of what we'd heard from our staff about potential capacity issues on both the electric and the water side. And I talked to manager Kevin Street about trying to set up a meeting with the county, and I did on August 13th. And Kevin had Bill Graham there to talk about water, and Jimmy Scarborough to talk about electricity. And I think we improved talking about communication, improve some channels of communication. The county staff had some old contacts with the PUD that they were sending notices to, people who no longer were with us. So I think we got that squared away. Had some really interesting conversations that State Department of Health has some funding available to do. I'm going to get this language wrong. When we take over a private water consolidation. So comprehensive consolidation planning money that the Department of Health has. And I think the idea is looking at the private water systems that are out there that are at risk of not being able to manage them anymore, of kind of doing some planning work ahead of time. And Bill was advocating for that. They had like 8 people from the county there for this meeting, and the Department of Health representative was saying they'd be very happy to write support letters. And so that was a good meeting, very productive.
Who all was it present at that meeting?
Oh my
again?
gosh, I'd have to go back and look at the names, but Brian, the fire marshal was there. They had a representative from the health department. They had about 5 folks from the long range and current planning side of things. Greg Ballard was.
And on our side, was Jose at the meeting, or?
No, it was.
Because Jose's a representative at the water committee.
Yeah.
Or voting member at Waputa. So if we can include him maybe in those kind of things, that might be helpful.
Kevin's
Kevin,
call. I
whoever-
just let Kevin know about it, but we had Bill Graham and Jimmy Scarborough.
Yeah, so that we can coordinate on that side of it at Waputa as well.
I think it's one of those things where, meeting with them occasionally, because it's obvious that they're having things happening, we're having things happening, and just being able to keep the communication open, I think will help. So they seem very open to it, and it's a good meeting. Listened in on the NOAANET meeting on the 14th. It was very interesting. Let's see, had a meeting. Oh, and then on the 16th, we had our special meeting, and then I stopped by county offices to see if I could catch public works staff, and I asked them about, I told Kevin this before the meeting, the question of when the county is approving private development that involves privately owned public wells, could we have the county use our water infrastructure standards, so that if we ever inherit the water system, we're not getting a substandard water system. We're getting something that's already built to our standards. And Monty Reiner's public works director with the county was very supportive of that idea. He said they're not doing a lot of that kind of development anymore, but when they do, that would make a lot of sense. So I encourage us to reach out to them and share what we can or establish some sort of process. Otherwise, developers just propose what they want. And if we're going to end up with it, it seems like we should, just like the city does, encourage private development to be something that we could take on eventually if we have to.
Was that county water plan part of this discussion or?
Oh, yeah. So sorry. So the county, yes, it was.
Okay.
So Brent Butler was there and he talked a little bit about the water system plan.
Because what you just said makes sense that Monty would agree with it, but again, the county
This
in
is-
general, if they can kind of coordinate with us better, I think that's a
Yeah.
good idea.
So that's a different issue. So the water system plan coordinated process, we talked a lot about that. The county is basically going through, so they dissolve there's a committee that they have to establish in order to create this plan. They dissolve their old committee. They're going through the process now of picking people to be on this new committee that's going to help them with the plan. They're determining how much the plan will cost. I think they're going out and getting some estimates from consultants. And Kevin shared with me, hey, the PUD is interested in this. The PUD may want to participate on some level or another. And I shared that with Brent Butler. So anyway, they're in that stage of I'd call it kind of the scoping process and setting up the committee. And to let them know that we need this thing to get done. So they're working on it. So they talked about that just a little bit. And then I asked Monty, and I also talked to Monty Reinders about the tri-area sewer plan, and that we're going to have this interlocal agreement coming to us at some point, and asked him if we'd like, the commissioners would appreciate kind of a heads up on some of the issues. And he said he'd be happy to come. So when you're comfortable having that on the agenda, he's happy to be here. On the 20th, met with Joel Paisner. I was today just a phone call on the way up here. Hoping tomorrow a call with Kevin if you're free. I'm going to listen in on the WAPEG meeting, which is scheduled for August 22nd. It's a virtual meeting, and that evening the EDC is having a mixer at the poorhouse. I thought I'd swing by. And I guess, so there is a formal notice that we have an ICG meeting on the 29th. Is that correct? Or we're not sure on that?
I haven't seen anything to tell me that there isn't.
Okay.
So
So I guess we
I
look,
guess that's the only way I can
I'm
answer it at
prepared-
the moment.
I'm prepared to go to that if it does happen. And that is my report. Okay. So back to the agenda. And I'm going to miss that I'm not going to be in Wenatchee for that Waputa meeting. I've got my son that week. So commissioner reports. So now we're down to consent agenda. Do we have any changes to the consent agenda? And if not, can I hear a motion to approve?
Motion to approve.
I'll second the motion.
All right, we have a motion and a second to approve the consent agenda. All in favor of approving the consent agenda, please indicate by saying aye.
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 Aye, consent agenda is approved. Old business, capacity charges, Kevin.
So we've brought back the capacity charge from a couple months ago. As it sits, I think we can all agree that we need to move forward with the capacity charge. Is just how the best way to move forward. So I'm going to talk about the electric capacity fee. What we've proposed is 40% of the $112 range. That puts it at, and I'm going by memory, I don't have my computer with me today, $2,035 for 200 amp service. We are recommending that once the dollar amount is agreed to amongst the commissioners, we're hoping to get that done today, that we can bring a resolution. That resolution we're recommending increase by 10% for the next 3 years. It would be reviewed at budget time in July so that it would be approved to go into effect, but the board could say, no, let's not do it this year. On the water, it's approximately $2,000 for the water. capacity fee, that's 50% of their total. We went a little higher on the water because proportionately their needs are greater. So that gives us a little bit more on the water side. So what I'm hoping from the board today is that we can come up with an amount and agree on something so I can bring a resolution. As staff, we are going to recommend on the electric side, the $2,035.
Okay.
So,
Yeah, I think what would be helpful today is just a little bit of feedback to Kevin. I appreciate you bringing this back to us. I think it's timely with us looking at the rate study and going into budget this fall. So I think what would be helpful is just, are the commissioners interested in this? Timing, when would we like to see it? What would we like, what kinds of information do we feel we need to have an analysis and a deliberation on it? And then maybe kind of what number we kind of want Kevin to start with, because Kevin before the meeting showed me he had a breakdown of, here's how many service requests we had in the last so many years in various categories of our electric customers. And then depending on what the amount for, say, the residential 200 amp service is, how that number would be different for, say, a commercial service of such and such size. So that kind of, I think, breakdown would be really helpful for the commissioners to see the impact and know, if we set it for this, here's how it flows through. So let's have some discussion.
yeah, this has been around for a while now, a long while. And, we rely on staff recommendations. They do their best to run the numbers, and things are fluid, things change. We all get that. This to me is a budget component that we need to get figured out and either do it or don't do it, for this budget in particular, but even the next budget, because what I'm seeing now, the timelines that we're on to figure out, we may not have a rate increase next year, not because we don't need it, but because just we may not have a survey back to tell us what our rate should be. So that's just one more piece of revenue that this could take up the space on, a small space, because we may not be ready next year in a timely fashion to do a regular rate increase, because we may not have the information. So again, it's a revenue issue, budget issue, but it's a revenue issue to me. That staff has told us that we're looking at some of this construction that's coming, and somebody has to be paying for that. And I believe, I support this capacity impact fee. And because new construction, that's got to be part of that equation. I mean, I don't think everybody should be tasked with covering the cost of that. And on that note, low income, how are we going to look at low income in this? That's still to me a little bit of a question. Maybe staff has that one completely figured out, but ultimately, and I started in reverse order, the first and foremost question for me is this is for legal counsel, are we on solid ground legally to utilize this fee? That's first. If we meet that criteria, I'm good from there on.
So I guess, Dan, I think what would also be helpful for staff is a number to start with so that they can provide some analysis. And then once we've got that, we can do the math to see, okay, if we cut that in half or if we double it, here's the impact. What's your comfort level on a starting number? They've proposed one of 2,035.
I'm fine with staff recommendation at this point, because like Kevin said, we're going to look at this every year. We can adjust it. We got to start somewhere, and we have to start soon, in my opinion. That's my opinion.
Okay.
So again, I'm going to go with staff recommendation. We've already beaten this down quite a bit from the original staff recommendation, and I don't know if that's been beaten down because of just, we said it had to be lower. Whether it should be lower remains to be seen by me. The cost of these things are the cost of these things. If we're going to keep telling them, no, we're not going to recover all of our costs, we need to be aware of that. The lower we knock that down, the more that the rest of the ratepayers through rates are going to cover these costs. That's my math. That's how the math works in my brain.
And then the question on just good, and maybe Kevin, you can talk a little bit about low income too, but I see Ken's got his hand up. So let's let Ken go next.
Thank you. So we've had a lot of discussions about the capacity charges, and I like the recommendation that has come back from staff on this. And I also, if I'm understanding correctly, it's going to get implemented gradually over a period of 3 years. I'm a little confused by the second to the last sentence under analysis. The adjusted cost per KVA and ERU will propagate to all rates. Can someone translate that for me?
I can translate that, Ken. So, for example, a 200 amp service is roughly $2,000. A commercial three-phase 12208 200 amp service will be about $3,800. So we're listing the residential, which is going to be the largest portion, but that same KVA dollar amount will go through each rate at the same KVA dollar amount.
And Ken, Kevin showed me a little spreadsheet he had, which shows for like the last 3 years or something, all the categories of rate classes that we have that we've had service connections to, how many residential ones, how many commercial ones, what was the amperage of the service, and then what would that capacity charge be for that service. And like the most, so with the consultant's proposal, that was like 5,000 some dollars, or 40%. So anyway, there was like the biggest service was a certain commercial service, and their charge would be something like, $40,000 for a large commercial electric service. So when he says propagate, I think that's what he's referring to. And I think with these numbers that they're proposing, if we say yes, go ahead and start your analysis with that, he can give us that table, which would show us this category of rate class. This would be the capacity charge for them. And just so we know, here's how many of these applications we've had in the last 3 years. Does that help answer the question?
I would be intrigued to see that particular table, and also to understand, had we the capacity charges in place at this level over the last 3 years, how much income to the PUD would that have generated?
Yeah, so I think, Kevin, what would be helpful, I don't know if you could just change that chart and make it the number, since both Ken and Dan have said we like the staff recommendation. If you could make it the staff recommendation number, show those numbers, and then maybe do the additional calculation of, if we had this in place, here's how much money would have come in each of these years, and then email it out to the commissioners. I think that would be helpful. Is that something you can do?
Yes, Jimmy put the chart together. All he does have to change a number. Very rough. And our construction has dwindled in the last 2 years.
So Kevin, does that just come through work orders? Is that how you would track
Yes.
that?
Yeah. We would have generated very, very rough numbers in 22, just a pinch under $1 million. In 23, 800,000. And in 24, we're probably going to be at maybe $500,000. So we're the sooner we do it, the better.
And that was at this rate that you're recommending now, or was that at the previous rates?
If you'd go with the total that FCS recommended of $112 per KVA, it was 2,097,000 in 22. That's through all rate classes. 2,097,000 in 2023. It's 1,000,008, and in 2024 will be at the 12. We would have been about 1 million.
So that's at the residential customer paying around 5,000 instead of the 2,000.
Instead of 2,000.
So again, my point, the more we lower it, the more everybody else is going to feel it in their rates.
So I think we're hearing that, yeah, if you could have Jimmy update that, and if it's got the total per year that would come in. That'd be a very helpful tool to start with.
Okay.
Okay. And then what is your thought on when you would bring this back to us, knowing that we've got budget stuff happening and rate stuff happening? When would you like to bring it back to us?
So I would like to bring it back to the board on September 3rd. And we would have a resolution pretty much based on this, and we would add some additional documentation. We could have it as an old business item and go over it one last time, but the sooner we implement it, that helps FCS, it helps Mike, it helps all the financial people moving us forward.
And then we haven't been talking about water, but can you add the water piece in there too?
Yes.
Okay. And the number of customers and the exact same kind of analysis.
The water is gonna be based on meter size, it's a little different versus voltage, but yes, we can put something together.
And then I think Ken's comment too, you've got in here, that it could increase over time, like 10% every 3 years. I think just, a section that, it doesn't have to be in the, getting this out to us, but when it comes to us on the 3rd, I think, a little more specificity about thoughts on future increases. And I personally like starting it off lower, because this is going to be a new cost that's going to kind of hit everybody by a little bit of a surprise. And because it's going to be new, they're not going to like it, but if at least when they pay it, they know, well, I paid it this year. If I waited 5 years, it's going to be more, it's going to feel like a better deal. And there were questions. I think Tom Tier sent an email about some case law about development impact fees that cities charge on new development, and the question of, do we feel like it can withstand that? I'm assuming that Joel will have some information, or the consultants will have some information about how this was generated and how it's solid in terms of being justified and our being able to defend the basis for it.
We do know other PUDs have capacity charges. So now what that means, I don't know, but they are capacity charges.
Joel Sandlin.
Sorry,
Joel.
okay. Go ahead, Joel.
Thank you. So, yeah, we'll make sure, at least from my end, I can, kind of do a final look at it. But, this is part of the tools the commission have to set rates, as long as they're fair and equitable the way we set all rates. So, the biggest question in my mind wasn't whether or not the commission had the authority to establish capacity charges. It was, how do you do it? How do you waive it in a fair way to provide low income relief from it? And we've had this discussion, and I think the safest harbor for that is to do it through current 501c3 organizations. So, but I can provide a little bit more information next meeting on the legal basis for it.
Right, and we talked a little bit about that last time. There was that discussion of, well, the current owner, can they argue that they're low income, so they should get it? And it seemed like where we landed was, well, it should really be tied to the property. Is this property it's new service? Is it being developed as a low, affordable or low income, some sort of definition of that's in some sort of perpetuity or long-term basis. So I think that's where you got that positive feedback. So, okay, I think we've answered the initial questions. Let's take some public comment if there is any. Phil, did you have
Yeah, I'd like to tag on to my comment earlier. I don't have any specific directions that I think is different than what you're already doing for capacity charges. What I'm saying is I'm seeing some data that I've never seen before that I think is incredibly valuable data, and it isn't the capacity charge part. What's valuable to me, and then let me just give a homeowner example. You buy into something, you've got a property charge, you've got an initial charge, and then the cost, and then you do a kitchen remodel. What's the cost basis of that property now? That's an important thing when you're a homeowner. And I think what I'm seeing on this analysis is a side effect that you've made data that's you may already have, but I've never seen before. And that is the total cost basis of the system that's in use right now is 18,345,000. That's a number that I think is good to grab onto because we're talking about the kitchen remodel now. It's a 4-year plan, right? But so we're talking about investing in something. And when we get done, what's the cost basis going to be of our infrastructure when we're done? Estimate. And the other piece of it is something that you guys talk about all the time, and it's what's the total capacity of our power grid with the current 7 substations is 131 megawatts or 131,000 kVA. Well, what's it going to be after we get done with 4 years and put a few more transformers and a new substation? I as a customer with an interest in this thing would like to know, okay, we're going to be at 300 kVA and 300,000 kVA, or we're going to be at 150 or wherever we're going to be. And if you take that 66 million and you parse it out and you throw out all the stuff that didn't go into building a cost basis, maybe that 66 million is it, and their line items are really nice. I think you could just zip through this calculation. Maybe it's 40 million. So, okay, so we end up at, we're going to have a 40 plus $18 million infrastructure that's going to produce how many megawatts? I'd just love to know that stuff. I'd like to know what it is today and I got it. I just like to know where we're headed.
Okay. And what I heard the general manager say is, the sense I'm getting is we've probably paid quite a bit to get what we've got. And we've got a number that's higher than the board wants to go with right now. I think his point is, I don't want to go out and have to pay this consultant tens of thousands of dollars more and take, we don't know how long, because all these consultants are busy. I think what we will probably get to is we're going to be updating this. And when we update it, if we're getting closer to the maximum level that was previously justifiable, that's where we probably plug in the new numbers and say, okay, now it's this because the system's.
I'm not suggesting you actually do the capacity charge again, because I'm just suggesting stop at the first 2 numbers. They're the numbers that I think are valuable in terms of what do we have as an investment here.
But if I could chime in, aside from, the energy usage in the grid or the capacity of the grid, I'm curious on the financial side with depreciation. Some of our older assets are depreciating out. Are the new ones going to depreciate at the same rate to determine the value of the system, right? Does that make sense?
Really,
is that part of this equation or not?
I don't think
from the finance side of things. When we try to determine how we're going to base cost, it depends on depreciation fits into that too. So just wondering if that was part of this equation or not.
I don't think so.
Mike shaking his head no. So
No, because we do not depreciate per item. They're composite unit items. So it's as they go in there, depreciates it as a group, not as individual items. So it's harder to know. It doesn't matter if it was installed 20 years ago, if it was installed yesterday. It's going to depreciate at the same rate and the same amount. Depreciate the group of items.
It seems like when the consultant is looking at the capacity of the system, he's assuming that we're maintaining it, that the capacity of the system will continue to be there. Depreciation is an issue, but it's kind of like a different issue. It's more of a budgeting issue. And are we replacing our system as fast as it's wearing out. But so I think for the consultant, he's just looking at what's your system rated at and not also getting into depreciation. Okay, so we have another question. Is that Roger on the line? You can ask your question or make your comment, Roger, if you can hear us. If
No, I need to raise his hand now, what, 6 to mute and unmute, or 6.
Star six, Roger.
Yep, star 6 to mute and then.
Yeah, we're not hearing you, Roger.
So 246, we can't hear you if you want to ask a question or make a comment.
Muted.
You're muted. If you get it squared away, holler out.
I am unmuted.
You are
There you go.
unmuted. You have 3 minutes if you choose to use
I don't know
them.
what's going on. Sorry about that. Okay. Yeah, I've said this before. It's always preferable to raise revenue through rates rather than fees because the rates promote conservation and reduce loads. Our customer base is growing at like probably a little more than 1% a year, and our load growth might be as much as twice that. And with that kind of load growth and revenue sales, we should be able to fund operations through rates. I don't see any need for a fee like this. Our problem is peak loads, and capacity charges don't address conservation or reduce loads. A capacity fee is just an example of another regressive tax that disadvantages lower income persons and makes housing less affordable. Affordable housing isn't just a low income issue. Without affordable housing, we don't have a middle class, period. And I think that we're going down the wrong path with the capacity fee, especially one that affects housing. And who's paying this? All our new growth is in residential and small commercial. We don't have any large industrial customers. This is all going to be paid for by the people with the small motors. Sorry, got an echo in there. Beyond that, the proposal has a huge flaw. It doesn't distinguish between new points of delivery and existing points of delivery. Growth management, the thrust of growth management is to try and create density. And what you're doing by putting a capacity fee on electrical delivery to existing points just disadvantages density, and I'm talking especially about ADUs. I think that there has to be something in the proposal that distinguishes between the two if you're going to have the proposal. Otherwise, you're working against the city, against the county, who are trying to increase density. And I'll leave it there.
Thank you for your comment, Roger. Tom, you've got your hand up.
I do, thank you. Roger just raised an interesting point, something or triggered a thought in my mind that I'd forgotten to ask before, regarding the rate of increase of load on the system versus the somewhat slower increase in the number of customers. One of the things that we had talked about years ago before the AMI, or as part of the AMI metering project, was that the PUD was probably missing out on at least $1 million worth of revenue because of old meters that were under measuring the amount of electricity that was being consumed. So I'm just wondering, now that we have a substantial percentage of the system equipped with AMI, can we run a side-by-side comparison of the properties that existed pre-AMI versus all the properties that have AMI, and sum up what their increase in electric utilization has been, and then compare that to the same, or to those properties that have not yet
been AMI upgraded, like mine, to see if there's any difference. In other words, has the AMI project in fact realized that extra rough estimate $1 million in revenue or not? And can that increase in captured utilization account for some of that increase in load per customer? Or is it just that everybody's got a lot more, hair dryers or whatever? It's not due to electric vehicles, by the way, because there are only 800 of those in the entire county. So, that's not what's adding to the load in any substantial fashion. Anyway, that's my question and comment. So thank you.
Okay, the part of the question I got was, is there any way for us to know if the AMI meters are registering higher use than the old meters? I don't know, Kevin, do you want to take a shot at that?
And Tom brought this up a while ago. This is one place where when we've lost Colton, we lost an asset that would help me put these numbers together. So I haven't done it. I can do it. It will take me a little time to put the numbers together. In some of our early testing, and how the first testing we did is we removed 100 meters. We tested them for accuracy. And there was this particular group, it wasn't quite a fair test because some of the meters had failed. So they weren't broadcasting at all. So that came back as a 0 read. So it fluctuates a little bit, but we can put some data together and swag some number. If I understood Tom right, our usage is up, and I agree, Tom, it's not just because of the 800 cars. People are using more power. We are registering more power too, though. So there is a little something there.
Well, I was at that cab meeting maybe 10 years ago that Tom referenced when Jim Parker and Kevin came to the cab and talked about the AMI initially, and it was $1 million savings was part of the selling point. Do you still believe that that is an accurate number to apply to the meters now, 10 years later, that would be what our target would be? Do you see it being more? Should it be less? Do you have any, your Kentucky windage on that number that Tom threw out there?
There's a lot that goes into that number. Right off the bat, then we were paying.
It's Roger. Can you mute him?
400 and some thousand for AMI metering to have the reads done. Those go away. We're doing that in-house. So there are things like that I think we're going to be close. I really do.
Yeah, I know there's efficiencies that come with the meters and
just rolling. We
Yeah.
don't have to disconnect. We don't have to roll a vehicle. It's not just the time. It's wear and tear.
And on the load side of things, I mean, we know that there's going to be some growth. And again, through the Growth Management Steering Committee, when we're hearing about the projections in population, and we're seeing, how that density is going to be, distributed throughout the county. And so there's things that we know the load's going to increase, not decrease. And, Roger's point on conservation, I think that has to happen through incentives, not through just higher rates to incentivize people not to use as much. That's not a good plan, in my opinion. You have to incentivize ways for people to want to use less power, not because you just have to pay for it, but in other ways. So the conservation issue is a different issue we have to approach in a different way and not bring it into the capacity fee, in my opinion. Because the other part of this that we're looking at with load is CETA, the Clean Energy Transformation Act. That's going to escalate. That's going to force the utility to have to, look at different issues with the community and how they utilize energy. It's just going to cost more. I mean, we're going to see a higher load. People are going to be forced to be not just EVs, but whether it's a smart home or not, the things that we're going to have to do in the state to comply with that act of the electrification of transportation and the economy is going to raise our load. There's just no way around that. I don't see any way that we can conserve our way from not having increases. We might slow down the rate, but it can't be in a punitive way. We have to, and time of use is going to be one of those tools. That's where the meters come in. We're not there yet. I've never been a big fan of the time of use earlier, but as we get along, I'm going to be on the time of use issue. So I think we start first and foremost with communicating to the public, change your habits, do these things. that may keep us away from having to utilize the rates or look at the meters for more information. We might be able to get our customers, kind of informed enough to where it won't be such a big issue as far as impacting rates in particular. So that's my 2 cents on load and what we're going to have to do with conservation and things like that. The capacity fee, I think, it's going to be a learning process like everything we do. We're just going to have to ride it tight on it and follow it and track it and see, whether it's punitive or whether it is, meeting the need that we're setting that there for from a revenue perspective and fairness perspective.
Roger, you're still shown as having your hand up. Did you have something else?
Could I ask a question? Yes.
Go for it.
Mr. Street commented that other PUDs have capacity fees. My question is, aren't most of those for water systems and not electric systems? Thank you.
And I think, so I think that's a good point, Kevin. When we get the staff report information back, if we could have any information, I think this was presented at one point in the past. I think we need to make sure it's updated. Like when I spoke to people at Clallam, they thought that they had a capacity fee, but it was temporary and it was gone after COVID. It was basically there to cover how their transformer costs just skyrocketed for a while. If we could have any information that we know of other jurisdictions that have capacity fees and what those charges are, I think that'll help the commissioners.
Mason 3 has a capacity fee and no water. Pacific PUD has a capacity fee and no water. So there are other electric PUDs that do it.
Okay. So anyway, I think if we could have that in the materials, that'd be helpful. And I think Roger and Phil too, your questions about whether we should only have things in rates and how we consider low income. I think once we get additional information, we see the proposed charge, we see how it flows through the different rates. Then I think, and we see what is the proposed low income discount, how would that work? I think then we can have a more formal, thorough discussion about, is it in the PUD's interest to pursue this or not? What will the impacts be? And then we can get some more helpful discussion from the public. My standpoint is, I agree. I think, and we're fighting different things. We're confronted with a system that is at its maximum in a lot of areas at certain times of year. We have a certain amount of growth. And then we see this, as Tom pointed out, we're seeing this change in electricity usage. And so we have to keep steady power on all the time. Then we also have to balance the budget. And when you put new numbers and rates, sometimes you see that additional revenue flow through, sometimes you don't. But we know we're absolutely going to have to make improvements to our infrastructure just to have it there. So when the new people hook up, like the people at the Eagle, not Eagle Ridge, Trailcrest, that we've got the power to serve them. So for a long time, cities have used, capacity charges or system development charges, whatever you call it, as a fair way for new development to kind of help pay its way. But I think, we're going to be able to have more of a discussion on this, and the commission can reach its conclusion of what the charge should be if we have a charge and how it applies. So I appreciate the questions, or good questions, or good points. But we need a little more information, I think, to have a thorough discussion. Ken?
The single point I want to make is there is no free lunch. That if you have a capacity charge that increases the cost for developers, that's going to be passed on to the cost of buying a house. And if you don't do that, and you put that charge or you try to collect the same amount of revenue through adjusting the rates, then that adds a burden, particularly to low-income people. So I think it's important in considering any rate change, what are going to be the immediate consequences, and can we identify some of the unintended consequences? Because again, there's no way of doing this without impacting some portion of the population adversely.
And I think we heard at the last meeting from Gene in customer service about what we're facing on the low income side of things from the state, that we're even though we're ahead of the curve for a lot of PUDs, everyone's woefully behind where the state is pushing us all to be on low income. And that's, again, that's revenue that has to be made up by other customers. And so how do we split that? Do we just, the low income, that's probably something that should be split amongst all the customers, residential, commercial alike. But the new construction, I think that's a place where we really do need to figure out what kind of a carve out is fair and equitable, to the other ratepayers about the system we have versus what the system's going to look like when that new load comes in.
Yeah.
I don't think there's any way we cannot take some action in that direction. And because to Ken's point, I don't think we can just keep spreading it out evenly amongst everyone.
And one other item that hasn't been brought up yet, and this relates back to BPA, is how much tier 1 allocation we get, how much of our power is going to fall into tier 2, what is tier 2 going to cost? And this gets back to time of use rates. This gets back to Roger's comment on conservation. I think that's a whole another set of things we're going to have to look at, because it will affect our costs. It'll affect the total cost that we're paying for power for this PUD that we have to make up for in some way. And I think, and where are we at with meters in terms of how many of we?
3/4 of the way,
We're
80%.
Yeah, do you have the latest update?
We're about
4,000?
5,000 left.
Okay, that's great. I think when we have this FCS thing, I think we should be talking about time of use rates. We should look at what do we know about our peaks and our tier 1 and how exposed are we going to be? Because I think that's that conservation element and time of use rates and trying to engage people and helping us stay below those peaks. Because I'm assuming, tier 2 power sometimes isn't more expensive than tier 1,
Well,
but I'm not betting that's going to be the future.
That ship has sailed.
It's going to be much more expensive. And I think that's a place where our customers could help us in the future if we engage with them.
That's where the dual markets comes into play. That's where the BPA provider of choice 2028 contracts are important. What's our headroom going to be? It's going to be probably less than what we had in the past. The tier 2 power is going to be more expensive, more than likely, even with a couple of markets, it's still likely going to go up. And you heard in my report, the 26 rate case, BPA are projecting now 13 to 14% increase in what we're going to pay for power in 26, 27, and 28.
So-
And we already experienced, Kevin has a number, maybe doesn't, the rate case we're in now has increased. So when we talk about budget and you hear me ask questions about revenues versus expenditures and what our projection of our power use, our power cost is and transmission cost is, I don't think we're in the neighborhood yet. I think we have to take a serious look at what our cost of power for 2025 alone is going to be, but for 26, 27 and the next couple budget cycles of what that's really going to look like. And I don't see where we're going to get the revenue without taking a bite of every apple that's available, or it's all going to fall on one apple, which is the base rate and the consumption rate.
All right. Well, I'm gonna move us along. We're gonna see this again hopefully on September 3rd with some more information. Good discussion. So I'm gonna move us on to new business 9.1 pre-qualification of electric workers report. Is that you, Kevin?
Do you want me to take this one? So this is a change for us. In the past, we have used tree trimmers that were recognized, qualified per staff and per our area. we've gone ahead and put them through kind of the same process we do our line workers, where it has to be a board certified company. And by that, we go through their financials, we being Mike. We do a review of the work they've done to make sure they're qualified. So these 4 tree trimmers work in our area. Primarily 2 of them, but we've used a 3rd one starting a little bit lately. May use the 4th, who knows? But we're requesting the board approve these companies to bid on projects the PUD puts out to bid for tree trimming in Jefferson County.
Okay, commissioner questions on this one? Seeing none, do we have any public comments on this one? Seeing none, so we have no fiscal impact. We have a recommended motion to add the aforementioned contractors to the district's 2024 list of pre-qualified contractors.
So moved.
Okay.
I'll-
Motion?
I'll second the motion.
A second to add these contractors to our list per RCW 5404-080 and 04085. All in favor of the motion, please indicate by saying aye.
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 Aye. And you have added these contractors. Thank you
Thank
very much. Next item is regulators bid. This one's painful.
Well, I am gonna add, this cost is nothing compared to one you're gonna get for a couple transformers here
Okay.
shortly.
Okay.
Which ties back into the capacity fee that, this is how we recoup some of these costs. So in a nutshell, right now I need a minimum of 12 regulators. This is for half of them.
And can you remind us what regulators do?
They take the voltage up and down.
Okay.
So as the load grows, the voltage goes up. As the load shrinks, it drops the voltage.
Quick question, how many are going to be put into service and how many held in warehouse?
So right now, these 6 would all be put in service within a couple months of being on our dock. In our transformer shuffle, we're going to use a smaller regulator, which means our capacity is going to be limited to about 3/4 of the transformer and Dana Roberts. Once these get in a year from now, then we can take the smaller regulators out, put these ones in, and would have full capacity at that transformer. So that's kind of the trade-offs we're doing now. So we would have to do some swap outs, but there's places for them today. We like to keep 3 in stock at all times. These fail. These are a piece of equipment that there's internal parts. It's got a motor, it moves, and of all of our equipment, it probably wears out the quickest. We have the most failures in regulators. Nature of the beast. So the recommendation here is not to go with the low bid. The Howard regulators are approximately 110,000 less than the Siemens. We purchased Howard regulators last time, even though they're not RUS approved. And we've not only had extreme failures on the Howard regulators, the repair time is ridiculous because we have to ship them off to the factory. It took over 14 months to get one repaired.
Okay.
Which means if that's our spare set, we're screwed.
Okay.
So we're recommending to go to the Siemens. They have been much more reliable. They are RUS certified, so that if we have our 4-year plan, these are things would be eligible to borrow against if they are certified.
Okay.
So, question.
So borrowed against is
Yeah.
good. I get that part of it. I guess my question is the amount that we keep in reserve, we would definitely want to have that spare parts around. Do any of our neighbors utilize these same ones that we can, horse trade back and forth. If they have a need, we can loan and vice versa. I mean, is there a consistency there? That's the first question. I have one more question.
So a regulator's a regulator. If they had to have something, they would take whatever we had. They may use different controls.
Okay.
So we primarily use a Schweitzer control.
So the capacity issues are the same. It's just how they control it would be the difference.
I don't know if we want to
Okay, we won't get into the weeds.
Yeah,
I'll
I think
go
we're
with
in
the
the
second part of the question and where I'm going with this is to keep a certain amount of them in reserve. Obviously, if we can horse trade to get them, that's helpful if we know other people have them. Because the reason I ask is how many we keep in reserve is if we have our capital building out project, if we're going after funding, not borrowing, but we're going after grants or funding, does it make sense to get too much stuff in stock? Would it still be, it wouldn't qualify if we already have it and we've already allocated funds towards it that we couldn't maybe use it for a grant possibility? How has staff looked at that angle or not, to look at the build out, the pace we're going to do it, funding that's available? Does it make sense to get too much stock?
That's why we're recommending 6, because I can put 6 in play within a year.
Yeah. So I think, again, we're getting a little bit into staff's management of the electrical system.
Yeah, but I'm trying to, for budget purposes, I'm trying to make sure that I'm understanding how staff is approaching it.
Okay.
I'm not giving them direction. I'm just
Okay.
trying to understand the process
Philosophy.
for funding purposes. Are we thinking about that? And I'm hearing the answer is
It's
yes.
similar to like our fiber. We pre-purchased fiber, but it's still, we could get reimbursed for the grants. Here, if we can use these other places, we can get reimbursed depending, it would depend on the grant or the loan or however we're looking for
Okay.
funding.
Ken, you got your hand?
Kevin? Yeah, Kevin, what are you looking for from the commissioners tonight? Are you looking for a motion? Or are you just informing us of a decision that has been made?
Think of a cost.
Because of the cost, Ken, I need a motion from the board.
So we have a recommendation to accept the regulator bid from Siemens for a cost of $546,912.
So moved.
I'll second.
Okay, we have a motion and a second. Do we have any further discussion or questions?
Are you going to get in trouble with, is General Pacific going to file a suit because you did not take the low bid? They provide an adequate regulator. You didn't discount those as part of the bid process. You're nodding your head. You
Well, so I guess the question, are we gonna get into trouble because of low bid? And it sounds like we don't have equal quality. We have a product that's not RUS approved and that we've had issues with.
In the bid process, we can evaluate them based on are they RUS certified? Have we had past experience with them? There's criteria in every bid that will allow us to, and this is one nice thing. On this particular item, we used our engineer of record, ICPE, to do the evaluation and stuff like that. So it's not like we just, okay, we want Siemens. They have to evaluate it. And so that's why the letter is in the board packet to show we did our evaluation.
Is ICPE the only engineering we're using on like the new substation build where these can conceivably be used, or?
Yes.
Okay, so we have a motion and a second. We've had some discussion and questions. I'm not seeing any other hands. Calling the question, all in favor of the motion, please indicate by saying aye.
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 Aye. We have approved you spending a little over $500,000 for some fancy metal part stuff. That'll keep the grid going.
And I'm going to throw this out there too. It does become, as we're starting to buy this long lead time items for these kind of prices, there's a financial, we have to always, we have to have that money.
Managing the cash.
It becomes much more difficult as more and more of these purchases are going to have to be made.
And Mike, you've got a way of keeping track of this that we just put a debit on the account.
Well, what I heard is reserves are going down again. I keep hearing every time staff talks, I hear about the reserves level going down.
There's an altitude. Well, we talked about one that would potentially add, so we weren't all spendy this meeting. All right, well, we've reached the end of our agenda. Thank you for everybody that has been involved tonight. It is 5:39 and I announce our meeting adjourned. Have a good night, everybody.
Good night.
Thanks, everyone.
Thank you, guys.
Thank you.